In this video, we'll be exploring virtual worlds. I'm Mark Pegram, and I'll be taking you through this material. Here's the usual copyright notice that you see at the start of all the online videos. Now, let's get started. A virtual world is a simulated three-dimensional environment which you navigate through with the help of a character that represents you. That character is known as an avatar. There are actually hundreds of different virtual worlds, but some of the biggest ones in terms of user numbers are actually children's virtual worlds. Many of these children's virtual worlds actually fuse a number of different elements together. They're kind of a cross between virtual worlds, social networking sites, and gaming platforms. Moshi Monsters, which you can see here on the screen, is one example. Here's another example of a children's virtual world which was very popular. However, in 2017, it was replaced with a new version known as Club Penguin Island. Here's another virtual world, this time for teenagers. Known originally as Habbo Hotel, it's now simply called Habbo. And as of 2012, it already had 273 million users. Without a doubt, the virtual world which is most commonly used in education is Second Life. It's a virtual world which is intended for adults, although teenagers can join with certain restrictions. As of 2013, there were 35 million resident sign-ups. In Second Life, you can visit all kinds of different areas through your avatar. This is one of my avatars that you can see on the left-hand side here in the main library on Info Island. And I'm standing in front of a display of Tolstoy books. I can actually access some Tolstoy texts by clicking on those books, which are effectively placeholders for information. A number of museums and art galleries actually have exact replicas in Second Life. This, for example, is the Alte Meister Gallery, which is in Dresden in East Germany. You can walk through the gallery, you can see where the paintings or other artworks are placed relative to each other. You can even take podcast tours. So this is the kind of exercise that a teacher might do with their students in preparation for a visit to an art gallery or a museum, or if students are living in a different country and are unable to access the art gallery or museum, at least visiting it in Second Life will give them some idea of what it's like. There are also replicas of famous architecture. As you may realize, this is a replica of the Sistine Chapel, which was created by an American university. So if you have no opportunity to visit the actual Sistine Chapel, at least you can send your avatar in here and get an idea of what the layout is like. And because you can fly in Second Life, you can actually get up very close to some of the more famous artworks. Second Life also has many dedicated educational sites, such as this one created by Elon University. As you can see, there is a slideshow about common misconceptions in astronomy. There's a globe which revolves and which you can look at from different angles. Sites like this often have different informational sources attached to quizzes which students can complete. If you're interested in exploring the educational possibilities in Second Life a little further, you might like to pause this video and go and have a look at the YouTube video at the address at the bottom of the screen. This particular video focuses on science education, but the sites it covers will be of general interest. And if that first video hasn't sated your curiosity, you might like to pause this video once again and go and have a look at this YouTube video. This is a more general look at educational sites in Second Life, covering, amongst other things, the replica of ancient Rome, which is designed for ancient history students. Finally, for a series of more recent videos about education and non-profits in Second Life, you could go to the address that you see on the screen. Like many universities, the University of Western Australia has its own island in Second Life. Some of you may recognise this as a replica of the sunken garden. In real life, of course, the ocean is not directly behind this garden. And here is the Second Life replica of the most famous building on the UWA campus, namely Winthrop Hall. Once again, real life is a little different. There's no floating conference centre directly above the hall yet. However, this floating conference centre is an interesting place to visit, and it's one where a lot of meetings and interactions take place. Here's my avatar standing inside the conference centre. You'll notice a lectern with a laptop from where you can do PowerPoint presentations, and you'll see 3 screens, which currently are showing a screensaver of the University of Western Australia. And here you can see my avatar standing at the laptop computer as though I were doing a presentation. All of the kinds of presentations and interactions which are possible in real-world educational settings are also possible in Second Life. So people who can't be in the same place at the same time can send their avatars to conferences, to meetings, and to classes. Actually, a number of large conferences have run parallel streams in Second Life in the last few years. This means that people who can't attend the conferences in person can send along their avatars and at least participate to some extent in conference events. You're looking here at a screenshot of a pre-conference event at which I gave a presentation about digital literacies prior to the IATEFL English Learning Conference in the UK back in 2010. Over on the left-hand side, you can see my avatar, and behind me, you can see the first slide in my presentation. I was able to interact with other avatars in this space, but my presentation was also beamed live into a room at the conference itself, and there was some interaction possible between avatars in Second Life and people who were attending the conference in person. So, what else might we do with Second Life in education? Well, here's an example of a video which was scripted by a law lecturer I worked with. She then worked together with a filmmaker in Second Life to have her story filmed. Previously, her students would have read about a story like this in the form of a printed case study. But here, she was able to give them something much more closely approximating a situated learning experience. In other words, they had an experience which was more similar to listening to clients recount stories which had happened to them. If you'd like to see this video, feel free to pause the current video and go to the YouTube address at the bottom of the screen. In the previous example, the active part of the learning took place in a face-to-face class, which was a follow-up to students' viewing of the video. But you can also build in active learning in Second Life itself. This is a wiki which was set up by a language teacher whom I worked with a number of years ago. He came up with a variety of scenarios and gave students different character roles. They had to work out what their characters would say in a given situation. They then went into Second Life as avatars and filmed their interactions. That's very easy to do because Second Life has an inbuilt video function. They then exported their videos and embedded them in the wiki, where their teachers and classmates could react and give feedback. So this was a very nice language learning exercise. Of course, all kinds of role plays are possible in Second Life, and they can all be recorded and reviewed at a later point in time. So students could act out the roles of shoppers in a shoe store, they could be witnesses at a traffic accident, or they could be doctor and patient. So it's not just language learners who can benefit from this kind of practice. People in all kinds of advising and counseling roles, or people who will be in those kinds of roles, can benefit from practicing in Second Life too. Here's an interesting example of a virtual world which is not Second Life, but which is quite similar to it, being used in a vocational college in Singapore. students were able to look at the online environment and decide how they would set up retail spaces in order to appeal to their target consumers. Finally, students who are preparing for a variety of different professions can benefit from treating Second Life a bit like a sandbox. Computer science students, for example, could create simulations like the one that you see here. So too could architecture and urban design students. In fact, as some of you may realise, this is a replica of Flinders Street Station in Melbourne. It was created by students at Victoria University, and it's part of their vision of what Melbourne might look like in the year 2051. Some of this technology might seem absolutely overwhelming when you first come across it. But, as Jilly Salmon points out here, it's not so much about the technology, it's more about the pedagogy. In other words, no matter how sophisticated the technology becomes, if we want to do useful things with it educationally, we need to start with the pedagogy. You might like to pause this video and have a close look at what she has to say. Although Second Life is certainly the most popular of the adult virtual worlds, and although it is the one that is still preferred by educators, there are other options out there. A number of educators have also moved on to OpenSim, where you can create your own virtual world. In fact, Victoria University, whose students created that Melbourne 2051 simulation that we saw a moment ago, has now moved to OpenSim. So it's another possibility worth exploring if this is an area that you're interested in. It's important to mention that there has been something of a move away not only from Second Life, but from virtual worlds generally in the last couple of years. If you'd like to read an article about this topic, you might like to pause this video and go to the link at the bottom of the screen. This article explores the reasons why, in this particular case, colleges and universities have moved away from Second Life. More generally, there's been a lot of interest recently in mobile devices and augmented reality, and that general area seems to have taken over from virtual worlds as the cutting edge of contemporary educational technology development. It doesn't mean that virtual worlds are finished. There is still a lot going on there. But for the moment, much of educators' focus has shifted towards mobile devices which can be used in the real world to blend the real and the digital, and therefore the attention has moved away from these fully simulated online environments. However, we're seeing the arrival of a phenomenon which may give a new lease of life to the idea of immersive three-dimensional simulations. I'm talking about 360-degree video, which has considerable educational implications. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. Feel free to pause the current video if you'd like to go and have a look at this example of 360-degree video. It's a representation of Dali's landscapes in the context of a 360-degree video. But perhaps the biggest news in this area has been the arrival of Google Earth virtual reality, which allows you to experience settings around the globe as if you were actually there. Of course, it's one thing to experience these 360-degree videos on a flat monitor screen, or in the form of some other kind of projection on a flat screen or a wall. It's quite another to experience them through a virtual reality headset, which gives you a much more immersive sense of actually being present in the various scenes. Virtual reality headsets will also make virtual worlds and online games seem much more immersive. And we're expecting to see a rapid increase in the shipping of these virtual reality headsets over coming years. And here are some figures predicting global sales of virtual reality headsets over the next few years. Perhaps the main usage of virtual reality we're seeing in the classroom so far is Google Expeditions, where an Android phone is placed into a Google Cardboard headset and students can have immersive educational experiences. For example, visiting parts of the planet that they wouldn't normally be able to access. If you'd like to watch a short video about this, feel free to pause the current video and go to the address at the bottom of the screen. The Google Cardboard headset is very cheap, and it's a good way of starting out in this area. But no doubt in time, we'll see many other more sophisticated VR headsets being used for the same purpose. This is Google's Daydream, a more advanced headset which is now on the market. Pulling all of this information together, we can see that there are a number of pedagogical advantages in virtual worlds and other simulated environments. They allow a kind of situated learning, even if they are based on simulations. And similarly, they allow a kind of embodied learning, even if that embodiment is through an avatar. Interactive learning is of course also possible. In virtual worlds, there are many different locations that can be visited by students. And once they start designing in virtual worlds, they'll be gaining important design and coding skills. On the downside, there is still some dependence on equipment, but it is becoming possible to access virtual worlds and particularly simulations in the form of 360-degree video on a range of equipment, including mobile devices. For a summary of the main points we've made about virtual worlds, as well as links to relevant references, please feel free to go to the Virtual Worlds page of the Digital Learning website. You'll find it at the address at the bottom of the screen.